Is this yes, it is happening today. Cool.
It's not like Alan to be late, so he might have canceled this meeting.
I didn't get the feeling that we've gone very far on the system management topic up to this point, and I've had conflicts for meetings, so I'm fairly new to the system management piece. Do we have a summary someplace, or is this something that's fairly new and we need to develop that?
It's very much in its infancy, and so you haven't missed out on much. And if Alan was here, he'd give you a good update status. I suspect that he canceled the meeting and we didn't see the cancellation.
Okay. How much longer should we give him?
I don't know. Few minutes here.
Yeah, I believe the meeting's still on the calendar. In the December meeting, he and I were the only ones on. So we had a discussion. So I'm John Leung. I'm the steering committee rep for hardware management. And so he and I had a fairly in-depth conversation. I don't know if it was recorded or not, about using redfish modeling to model what he was planning. So he showed me some of the slides that he had presented at the Global Summit, and I said, this is fairly easy with the redfish if modeling, if he wants to add additional properties, and we would just give him a platform type or processor type that he wants, and he can define whatever properties and values are unique to his architecture. And that's kind of where we left it. And so,
Are you
go ahead.
Cool. Are you familiar with the work going on Sunfish?
Yes, I do. So Sunfish.
Okay. Are you involved in Sunfish as well?
I tell you all my hats. So I'm in the DMTF. I am on the board, and I'm the VP of alliances. So I create alliances with various other standards bodies. So I create the alliance with SNIA with storage, and I create the alliance with Open Fabric Alliance. Yeah.
Okay.
So for them to do Sunfish. So I'm I know about it, but I'm not particularly involved in day-to-day activities with Sunfish, other than their base for their Open Fabrics manager is based on a Python implementation that I had done.
Okay. So
okay.
Do you mind if I ask a question, Alex, or were you finished?
Sure.
So Sunfish is Open Fabrics Alliance.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so we're actually considering they're a much smaller organization sort of entering. And so Liquid, I think we're going to join that. Is there sort of we're going to join the Open Fabric Alliance? Is the forum or the consortium fairly active? I think I looked at it quickly, and they have a few meetings. Is it fairly well organized as to what they're doing with Sunfish, or is it still kind of in its infancy also?
I think they're fairly well along the way. So okay. I'm gonna. Oops.
I've been starting to work with the Sunfish folks because, and I think that there's a tie-in between, but I am concerned with the way that Sunfish is evolving and that is pushing far too much complexity to the user, which leads me to be like, I think we need more participants involved in Sunfish and at this level open fabrics and things like that, so that when it comes time to use, Sunfish as a standard within what we're working on, we don't have to navigate large amounts of complexity.
That's a very good concern. So I'm going to show you something. So this is from the DMTF website. So several years ago, we created a number of alliances between the DMTF and all the players that we knew were coming into the space. With SNE, I mentioned Open Fabrics Alliance. These are all individual work registries where we publicly state what this alliance is trying to accomplish and what the goals are and what the products are. And they're all listed above in various registers. This was originally created to deal with the complexity of VME. With VME distributed over Fabric, you can multiple boot paths. There were a whole bunch of issues with trying to figure out what boot path was being assigned to what platform. So as part of that, we created this triumvirate. And when Open Fabrics saw that they were building, they came in and they said, hey, we're building a fabric manager to manage all types of fabrics, whether it be InfiniBand, CXL, PCIe. We'd like to understand what you guys are doing. So we created an alliance with them to have that discussion. And so one thing I've told most people about this is that this is a bunch of standards people, a lot of engineers doing a whole bunch of work. And the issue is that the descriptive standards bodies, they describe and they try to create and increase their amount of description. So Redfish has gone to describe managing DSIM devices, which are the air conditioners and things on the side of the data center. So they're all constantly increasing. Um, um, uh, Complementary to that is what I call prescriptive standards bodies. They prescribe what needs to be done, right? And so as our standards gets bigger and bigger, prescriptive standards basically come in and say, I don't need all that stuff. I need this subset. And so we created the profile mechanism for standards bodies like OCP to come in and say, for managing our servers, all you need is this stuff. Thanks for the rest of the model. We'll get to it when we care. But this is the proper subset that we need across manageability we want across all OCP platforms. When I came to OCP and I created the alliance partnership with them, I said the problem with being a bunch of engineers in a room is that you no longer know what the use case is. So we value OCP because you guys have end users that actually get together and say we need this, and so you're more apt to prescribe what type of manageability you guys need. So if we define too much, that's our problem. In DMTF, OCP defines some subset. So I've always erred toward it's better to go listen to users because they'll tell you actually what you need. And so if your feedback is, are you guys in Open Fabrics are making this much too complex for the user, that's information they need to know. And hopefully we can adjust the model and the implementation to minimize how much complexity the user needs to understand.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I've been doing, and I've been thinking about this project along the way, thinking, boy, if we are going to do fabric connected everything across this disaggregated system, then the complexity of making sure that we understand the state of all of the things is important. And so we've been talking about, like, is there a way to reduce the excuse me, so do we need to reconcile the state of the entire system in order for anything to happen, or can we reconcile smaller chunks of the state so that at least we know these pieces are consistent, and then we lock them so that a change can't come in and invalidate like basically the state of a running HPC job on a set of disaggregated hardware? Because I think concern that I had was, well, wait a second, what if somebody accidentally or on purpose just removes a GPU from a running job? Like that, we can't let that happen. But the standard makes that pretty easy.
Yeah, I mean, yes, that's information they need to know. My immediate view of it is that um, you should warn people if they're about to remove a GPU. Like, I want to remove the GPU, won't affect anybody. And if it does, right, some indication and alert needs to be sent across everyone who uses that resource that, hey, someone
Right.
inadvertently removed this. Right, so there'll be a propagation storm of error messages they are going to get, and this is the root cause that caused it at this time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking is like, how do we build the standard around, like, not the recovery from an accidental, but the, like, how do we prevent accidental, how do we do that? And is that
Oh,
a standard where it needs to be in the standard, or is that a software implementation question? And so these are the kinds of things that I'm particularly interested in as we start talking about system management for disaggregated hardware, wherever it is.
right, right, and that's why I say, with the DMTF and SNIA, um, uh, kick that up to something above us makes that decision, right? And when that policy is enforced, right, you can either remove this GPU or not remove this GPU. We just put the infrastructure in place to alert everybody that either this, we tell you whether someone has locked this GPU, and so you
Mm-hmm.
knew when you took it out that someone had locked it, and when the CPU gets removed, I will notify everybody. Does this resource that at the
Oh,
lowest
okay.
level is
So
what gets happen, right?
I see
So
what you mean.
somebody above us, right, says, okay, based on this is what our policy is, right? And then we can express that policy in some abstract model.
Okay. Yeah. So is that, does all of this make sense given the discussions that you've had with Alan about where where system management should be for this? Does that mean that the policy processing engine should be a part of the system manager for this, or do we think that like that's outside the scope of what we want to discuss?
Um, he was basically educating me on what you guys were trying to do, and I was trying to educate him on Redfin and what it was and what's going and its flexibility. And so that particular
Okay.
decision we never got into.
Yes.
Okay. Cool. So then
Can't
I'm in at the right point where.
Yeah, I
Right, but
can't speak for Alan because he's not here. However, I've been familiar with this project since its beginning, and he doesn't want to reinvent anything. He wants to leverage all of the standards and APIs that are already available, and make and have it work with this system. So, and one comment kind of from now, I work for a private company that's building a product that's a fabric manager. And so we want to be compliant with all the APIs, but then we believe that there's a product space, and particularly with Liquid at the rack scale, although we have larger deployments. But as CXL and these other standards evolve, we believe we're well positioned to be a fabric manager as a product that leverages the APIs either above us or below us even. And I'd say even above us, such as maybe Sunfish or Slurm or something like that. But to your question, Alex, I think Alan is very open to having this management structure completely conform to some fraction of all the standards that are out there.
Yeah, I guess I just haven't seen a good standard for disaggregated hardware yet that I felt like was something I could then rely on or build software towards. Or I mean, I work at LANL, and we build some software ourselves. We buy a lot of software, so I mean it's both directions. But um, but I just haven't seen a standard yet that I feel like is good enough that if it was implemented correctly, I could rely on it. And that's, I guess, does
Yeah.
Liquid feel differently?
No, it's evolving. It's it's an emerging, a lot of work to be done topic. However, you see there's a lot of interest in it because folks are coming around from all
Yeah.
various different directions. And it's as we like to say sometimes, the Wild West. So it's not been settled. It's not completely settled yet with all the pieces hooked up and working. There've been some interesting implementations. Gen Z did a fairly complete implementation, and that was primarily HPE. And so there's some knowledge and some influence there, but however, there's a lot of work to do still. And the standards help. Redfish helps. DMTF, they've been driving that. Jeff Hillen with a vision for that, for simplicity and making it work for a long time. And so it feels like this is all goodness, and everybody's kind of behaving. There's a lot of overlap, it seems like, in some areas. However, that'll resolve itself as we build implementations.
So Redfish currently
Totally.
has a fabrics model. We released a couple of how-to videos on it, actually over the Christmas holiday, and it also has a composition model on how to create compositions with disaggregated components. So we've had those for a while, waiting for the industry to kind of want it. So it may be a good time to bring those back up as models that we have in place and that we offered to OFA that they could also utilize.
How would I go about finding those? Because I've looked for things like that previously, not obviously since the holidays, but I would really love to find where the DMTF feed of these kinds of things is coming through, because I guess I'm not signed up to the right mailing list or something.
Okay. Let me put that in chat. Okay. You'll find
also,
go ahead.
Okay, so I guess the news tab of this.
So I'm going to bring it up now that you have the link. Okay.
Yeah, I was looking at the 2023 year in review to see if that might have the stuff I was looking for.
Now, because some of it's been is kind of old in my mind, but they've been around a while. So this is the link that I sent you. Find. Okay, so here under fabrics, there's a white paper on Redfish fabric model. There are two videos, I guess, on fabrics configuration and routing. These are YouTube videos and fabric examples on how you use this fabric model for everything from CXL to PCIe to Ethernet. And then below it is the composition model, white paper, on how you use Redfish to do composition. And there's three types of composition. You can do a specific composition in which you specify exactly what gets composed together. So this is a how do you micromanage a composition? So you connect these two together and these two together. That's the first level. Second is constrained composition, where you say, I just want 4 CPUs and 2 TB of memory. You go figure out where it is because you have a better understanding of the locality of these things, and this may be my bandwidth and a requirement between them. But I'm going to let the Redfish service go figure this out because it's closer to the hardware. And that's constraint composition, where you define the number of constraints. And the third level is what we call intent or manifest composition, where you specify topology of platforms. So you might specify 4 platforms. They should be connected in this way. That's my intent. You go figure out how to go do all of that stuff because I expect you to be even more intelligent than the other Redfish server to understand the topology of a thing. And you will set up all the quotes, routing and switches and connections for me. And it will return how much of the quote manifest it was able to fulfill. So that's when you read that, I think it will become clear. I don't know. I think it should be
so I've got this. That's awesome. I opened this up and I can already tell that it has some things in it that I thought were missing from Sunfish, which is really good. So I can go and redirect some of the Sunfish folks to this and say, wait, we don't need to try to reinvent the wheel. Let's just do this.
Right. Yeah. You also know it talks about free pools and active pools because you're shoving things in and out. Okay.
Cool. I am looking forward to reading this some more. I think the constrained composition workflow is exactly where I would want to see effort going into software. Awesome. So my background, I before coming to LANL, I worked at Cray and then HPE on system management. And so using Redfish and other things to try to do HPC system management. And one of the things that I found was that aggregations in Redfish were very difficult to know whether they were working correctly to get feedback about, at least with the version that we were dealing with at the time. And so working forward towards how do you identify that a particular aggregated action is in process? How do you identify if it partially succeeded, how it partially failed? Those kinds of things were really tough for us at the time. That was like 5 years ago. This looks like it's trying to address a bit of
so that was before the aggregation model. So Redfish now, Redfish now has an aggregation model. And it basically allows you to create impromptu groups of resources. So you can go into it was actually done for firmware update. So you go into a rack of servers and say, I want all servers with this level of firmware. And that will create a impromptu group that will now initiate a firmware update action on. Now, your particular issue of once I initiate this, what happens as far as error pass of I was unable to update all of them, and I was only able to update 3 of the 5. That interaction, I don't think is fairly flushed out. So, any feedback you have on how we need to improve that interaction model and specify it so we have interoperability would be very useful.
Yeah, so I'm starting to work with the Open Rack Manager for that very reason, and that use case in particular, updating the firmware process set of BMCs. So, okay. Yeah. Anyway, I don't know. I feel like I asked a ton of questions, and like half of the time has elapsed, and we have no Alan. I don't mean to monopolize you guys' time, but presumably these are the things we should be talking about in this group, right?
Exactly. And I have no problem answering questions. Okay. That's what I did last session with Jeff Allen here, was
Mhm.
trying to bring him up to speed on, hey, there's a whole class of work collateral already existent. Is it a matter of picking and choosing what you want, or is it a matter of thanks for all this, but here's the gap that we need to go fulfill, and providing feedback as to, can you guys go fix this gap, and then we'll be complete. And he was perfectly okay with it.
Yeah, I think,
Yeah, no,
Alex, I think your input's is very valuable here, particularly as a user and the insight. And so my opinion is that Alan wants to just stovepipe together all of these pieces in a open standard fashion. He says multiple times, one of the things we have seen in the past is that every one of these large systems has its own management infrastructure, and it kind of gets redone for every large system. And so the goal here is to not do anything bespoke, try to do it within the standards in the consortiums.
well, and my specific job at LANL is to kind of try to put an end to that. Every big system gets its own totally new set of software, which means we at LANL can never rely on people getting better at tools, because the tools change too frequently and they have no input into how they change. So our preference is for open source software. But because we believe that gives us, makes it more likely for us to be able to sustain that, even if a vendor disappears or starts looking in a different direction. But we would much rather pay someone to build and support open source software for us, rather than being on our own doing it ourselves. We like open source as a backstop, not a procurement model.
So did you mention that you were looking at the Open RMC DM workstream?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we think that the Open Rack Manager specification is a bit narrow, but a very, very good start. And so I'm talking with members of the systems design team at LANL and also at HPE on where we think we can find a commonality, and then build from there.
Well, one thing about the OpenRMC, it's the same philosophy I have about most profiles. The first one is that you want to make the first one, or the baseline, as low as possible, so more entities are able to jump over it, or else you'll never get anyone on stage. And then once you have that in place, you can specify another one and raise the bar as high as you want, and say, well, now that we're at baseline, you can be either at baseline or level 1. So, and you can go specify level 1 at a much higher level. But you can only do that once you have a baseline, where people can say, hey, it's nice, but it doesn't have a lot, guys. And obviously, I fully admit it does not have a lot. So as you discover things that you need, I would recommend you come in and say, hey, I want to do a new level, right? At this level, and I want to go create a profile at that level.
So like Open Rack Manager v2 kind of thing, or
Yeah.
v1.2 or something.
Yeah. The way
that's exactly what.
The way we do standards, at least in profiles, is that version number, major numbers change when things get deprecated or added, or deprecate when you have to change the client, right? I've modified something that requires you to change your client. Dot releases mean that I've added something. You don't need to change your client at all if you don't want to use it. But if you want to use this new feature model, right, then you have to change your client. And then dot release means you do not have to change your client at all and be able to use this new profile. So right now we're going from 1.0 to 1.1, which we've added a couple of things, but we have not gone to 2.0 because we haven't deprecated anything.
Cool. Yeah, I don't know yet, based on my preliminary conversations with HPE and the folks at Inside Lanel, whether we're talking about what might be considered a major version or a minor version. But
right. All I say is
but I
that
think
numbering
evolving the
is
standard is
the numbering is driven by what your changes are. Right, we don't number and then make changes.
That makes sense.
We make changes and then we drive the numbering. So because the numbering communicates to client community, who's writing all these clients, whether how much this a change affects the existing code that's already running and deployed.
Cool.
Having come
right.
from the DMTF, we have a long history of understanding standards and their impact to the industry when we change them.
My background is, I mean, I've worked with Redfish, but my background is mostly in cloud software, and so we tend to move faster because we don't have to burn anything into firmware. So I think our version numbers would play a little fast in this, more so than I think we can do with a standard like Redfish.
I understand.
This is really helpful to me.
Well, I think this was all recorded, so Alan can catch up by listening to the recording.
Okay.
And I'm going to drop now, but Alex, it's good to have your input. I know he'll welcome it.
Great. Looking forward to working more with you.
Okay. Thanks, guys. I think we're done.
Cheers.
Okay. Bye, guys.